So I'm going to run through today how to put a budget together for ITEFL purposes. So first of all, what is the budget? Well, budgeting is the process of estimating your likely income and expenditure and putting these into a plan. Now, creating this plan allows you to determine in advance whether you're going to have enough money to do the things that you want to do or the things that you would like to do. So why do we need budgets? Well, this helps the SIG achieve both their short-term and their long-term goals. And you can do this in lots and lots of different ways, isn't it? One of the main things is that it can communicate really important information to your stakeholders, and this could be anything from sponsors of potential events, your committee members, how much they could claim for a meeting, how much they have to spend for a project such as a new website, for instance. But it also can be for parties that you're holding a joint event with, so that it could be used to decide how you're going to split the profit, for instance, what costs each party will cover. It's really important as well that you make your budget smart, and I'm sure we've all heard this, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time orientated. So firstly, it can help you coordinate your activities and decide how the resources of the SIG should be best used. But also the achievable part of it is really important. It's important to make a budget something that can be achieved, but perhaps slightly challenging. So when you're thinking about sponsorship, for instance, just putting it that little bit of a target, I suppose, something that may stretch you a little bit, but is still realistic. It can also help to evaluate performance. How did you perform against your budget? And if it is significant, why is it significant? Why is it different? And what could you do differently next time? It might make you think about what worked and what didn't work. And also to identify if there are any wasted resources. So next time you might want to make it more efficient. Did you order food for 100 people but were only having 60 turning up? Did you need 3 tea and coffee breaks in the day, or would 2 have sufficed? Did you cover expenses for all committee members but actually only 3 were ever doing any work? It also helps you meet ITEFL's statutory obligations, and this is really important from a head office perspective. ITEFL is a charity, and head office and the trustees are responsible for ensuring that the charity's money and assets are looked after and used appropriately. As part of this process, its annual accounts, including the SIG finances, have to be submitted to both Companies House and the Charity Commission each year, and they're available to be viewed by the public. So as part of this reporting process, ITEFL has to ensure that certain processes are followed, and part of this will be setting budgets, keeping track of them, having clear policies to deal with money coming in and out, and keeping accurate accounting records. So moving on now to what a budget process might look like. Now, the 3 main types of budget that ITEFL will require from you will be your annual budget, an event budget, which will be done on an ad hoc basis, and a PCE budget. Now, that's not to say that all SIGs will have a PCE, or a pre-conference event, as we also know them, but most of you will. So what challenges, first of all, might you face when you're setting a budget? You might feel that there's a lack of financial expertise or experience. You might be trying to set a budget before actually the current financial year has actually finished. It may be that you've got a lack of actuals to compare to a previous year. Basically, what you're trying to do is make a best guess about future events, and it's weighing up competing priorities and interests. So looking at our annual budget, first of all, what is it? Well, it covers the whole of the financial year from the 1st of September to the 31st of August, which is ITEFL's financial year. It includes all the activities you have planned, including any projected surplus or deficit from events you might want to run or you're already planning to run during the year. And it has to be with head office by the 31st of July. This enables us to have everything approved by the 1st of September. So, how do you go about preparing an annual budget? Well, firstly, think about your annual plan. This will cover all of your goals for the year ahead. It may not be able to cover absolutely everything that comes up during the year, but it should give a broad overview of your goals for the year ahead. Secondly, decide who is going to be involved in the budgeting process. Now, this could be your treasurer, it could be your coordinator, it could be your event organiser, it could even be the whole committee. A participative budget can help all committee members to appreciate the strategic plan for the SIG and the constraints that the SIG faces. So it's always good to communicate your budget and also to discuss various elements with people who perhaps are a little bit more knowledgeable in those areas than you are. It can also help to highlight something that you might have overlooked, and it can help motivation by being felt included in this process. So give that some thought. Who are you going to involve? Next, you need to identify the sources of information you need, and these might include membership figures for the SIG. It might be your latest membership figures. It could be last year's actuals. See how that performed against the budget that you sent the previous year. It could include quotes for expenditure. For instance, if you are undertaking a website development project, you will want to make sure that you've got the best and most competitive quote, or the person that may be doing the job to the correct specifications. ITEFL produces various templates, and there is a template available for an annual budget. It doesn't mean that you have to use only that template, but it can provide you with quite a clear guide, and it can be adapted. It will help you consider the likely sources of income and expenditure. It's an Excel document, and it will be available within the SIG coordinator's drive to be able to use. It's also available from head office, so should you want that and you haven't got it, please give us an email, pick up the phone, and we'll send that out to you. Keep revising your budget until all of the decisions have been incorporated, and that's where it's good to communicate with other people within your committee. And then send it on to head office for approval. We may come back with some questions. We may ask you for a little bit further information. We may identify something that you've perhaps forgotten or might not have given some thought to. So there may be a little bit of toing and froing, but eventually it will go to the treasurer and it will be approved. At this stage, that budget can no longer be revised. What can happen is, if you know that something is going to be substantially different during the year, just let us know. Let us know as soon as you know, and we can put a note into the accounts. We won't change the budget as such, but when that actual is compared to the budget and we see a fluctuation, it can be explained by way of that note. A budget never means that the actuals are going to exactly match it. There will always be variations, but you should try to work to the budget, and we can then just note when it's different and why it's different. So think about your annual sources of income, and I've listed some there for you. Membership fees, event surpluses, sales of newsletters, advertising revenue and sponsorship. They're the typical ones that we see within ITEFL, but you may have others that are specific to your special interest group. Put all of them into your budget. And what are some of your annual costs of expenditure? Again, I've listed some there for you, but it's not an exhaustive list. Some of the typical ones we see are costs of newsletters, office expenses such as postage, photocopying, printing, stationery, your committee meeting expenses. Think about who you're going to cover, who's going to attend that committee meeting, the costs of travel, whether you're going to cover the costs of lunches and dinners, etc. Always bear in mind, though, ITEFL have a finance policy and there are limits. This will be within your SIG handbook, but again, if you need clarification on that, please do contact the head office. You also might want to include, or should include, your June SIG meeting costs. That's the cost for the coordinator to attend the June meeting. ITEFL typically will cover the autumn meeting, with the SIGs paying for the spring meeting. You also may want to think about any fees that you pay to perhaps newsletter editors or web administrators. Some special interest groups do pay a nominal fee for people within your committee to do that, or even people external to your committee to do that. And also think about any web hosting costs as well. Then you have your exceptional items, and I've put some examples there. They're typically examples of items that you may not incur on an annual basis. For instance, you may decide to do a scholarship one year and not to offer it the second year or third year. You may be travel grants, and again, these could be tied to perhaps an event that you're running, or offering a travel grant to go to your pre-conference event. It could be that you undertake a large project on website development, for instance. But they're costs that you're not always going to incur on an annual basis. Moving now on to event budgets. Now, an event budget is a budget that's tailored to a one-off event and should include all the income and expenditure for that specific event. If you are thinking about holding an event, you must supply a budget to head office for approval before you announce it publicly. And the budget should be supplied well in advance of the date the event is due to take place. This gives us enough time to go through the approval process with you, and again, it may be that we need to ask you for further details. It may be that we identify something that's missing from your budget. It then gives you enough time to advertise it and to then hopefully have a successful event. So how do you go about preparing an event budget? Well, I would recommend that you put all of your plans for that event into a Word doc or something similar, because not everybody thinks about events in a financial terms. They think about them in logistical terms, and it does help you to think about your event in those practical terms. So I would be thinking about your dates. When are you going to hold this event? Where's it going to be held? How long will the event run for? What's the capacity of the venue? How many people do you think you could actually attract to that event? What activities you think you're going to be undertaking? and put in as much detail as you can. Once you've got those details, once you've got the idea about what you think you want to do for that event, you can now translate that into financial terms, and you can start to see if you can make this event feasible. Again, ITEFL do have a template that we are able to provide you. It is a guide, and again, feel free to adapt that to your particular circumstances. Firstly, I would put down my fixed costs. These are the costs you have to cover to be able to put that event on. Now, these will typically be your venue costs, any costs of AV, audiovisual equipment, any insurance costs, any equipment hire. These costs don't increase or decrease depending on how many delegates you have, and you have to cover them to be able to put that event on. Next, I would think about delegate fee income. Now, to do this, you need to know what the capacity of the venue is for the type of activity that you are undertaking, and also consider any equipment you may be having in the room and the layout of the room. All these things do restrict space, and capacity can be reduced. So the maximum capacity is the level that you won't be able to go above. So there's no point having a capacity of 50 and saying that you're going to have 60 delegates in your budget. It's not going to work. So once you've got the capacity, the maximum of capacity, think about how many people you think you could attract to this event. And it's really key here to be realistic. Look at your other events that you've held. How many have they attracted? Speak to other events organisers that may have run an event to find out local knowledge. Then I would also consider what you want to charge your delegates. What do you think is a realistic fee to charge them? Think about how many free spaces you will be providing. And also consider setting an ITEFL member price and a non-member price. Therefore, making it more attractive to be an ITEFL member to get that discount. You may even want to consider whether you're going to have an early bird rate. Once I've multiplied this cost across, i.e. the fee that I want to charge them by the number of people I think I can attract, I would look at whether my delegate fee income covered my fixed costs. If it doesn't, I would now start thinking about how am I going to cover this shortfall? Will I be seeking some sponsorship? Will I have any exhibitors? Will I put advertisements which are chargeable in the programme? And also you may want to or need to increase the delegate fee itself. Now I would start thinking about variable costs, and these are costs that do increase or decrease depending on how many people or attendees I would have attending my event. Now, delegates are going to be the ones that are attending academic sessions, but you may also have other people, such as exhibitors, such as committee members who are helping to organise the event, such as stewards. Now, you need to still think about all of these people because you're going to have to cover their costs when it comes to things like teas and coffees or lunches. Now, some of your variable costs may well be those kind of things. Teas and coffees. Think about how many breaks you're going to have. Lunches, are these going to be included? Are you going to have a drinks reception? Will you be providing delegate bags, badges, lanyards, certificates? And again, remember for all of these categories to include all the attendees, not just your delegates. Finally, I'd think about all my other overhead costs, things like your speaker fees, your costs of travel and accommodation. Think about whose costs are you going to cover, and are you going to put a limit on that? If you are holding an event overseas, put in 2 columns, being the local currency and the sterling equivalent, and that will help you particularly if you're taking any on-site registrations, because for financial purposes, we are obviously a UK-based company, but with our accounting systems in sterling, but you will also need to have a local currency rate that you're going to set. Okay. Now, moving on to your pre-conference events. Now, a pre-conference event, or a PCE as we abbreviate it to, this is essentially an event budget. However, it is tied closely to the annual conference. A lot of the categories that we have on other event budgets are similar to the PCE layout. However, ITEFL will supply your room hire costs for the conference venue and your catering costs, and we'll do that around about May-June time to help you decide whether you want to hold your PCE on-site or off-site. And your budget should again be with head office by the 31st of July to give us enough time to again go through the budgeting process with you and to have those in place by the 1st of September, which is the start of the next financial year. It also helps us to have it earlier, knowledge of whether you are going to actually hold a PCE, because not all SIGs do decide to hold a PCE, and we do have to go live with our database. So having this knowledge about whether you're intending to hold one or not is really helpful for us. So how do you go about preparing a PCE budget? Again, there is another template provided by head office, and that will be in the SIG coordinators drive. But again, if you have any problems accessing it, please do get in touch with head office and we will send that through to you. You pretty much go through the same process as when preparing an event budget. So all the previous things that I've discussed are things that you should be considering when you're holding your pre-conference event. But you should be aware the price for a PCE is set at the spring SIG meeting and therefore is pretty much non-negotiable. The conference venue room prices, as I've already said, will be distributed in June for the SIGs to select their rooms. And the conference venue catering costs will again be supplied in June, as these are fixed by the venue if you are obviously deciding to hold your PCE on site. If you are going off site, just make sure that your budget reflects your venue prices for these items. So I thought here I'd just put some of the frequently asked questions we get asked at head office. Can we set a special price? Well, yes, you can. We can set up promotional codes for you, which operate almost as discount codes, but it's always worth giving careful thought about how you want these to work and giving us clear instructions so we can then come back to you to know whether what you're intending to achieve is actually achievable. We also get asked, well, we want to hold a joint event, so how does this work? Essentially, it's the same. You will need to submit a budget showing what costs you will be covering and what costs will be covered by the other party. Think about if there's going to be a split of profit, and if the event is not profit making and it's actually a loss making event, who is going to cover that loss? Is that again going to split equally? Think about who's going to collect the income. It's usually better for one party or the other party to do that. Obviously, for more detailed guidance and assistance, the Finance Committee are available to all of the SIGs to ask for advice and to ask for guidance in any aspect of budget setting. So please feel free to contact the Finance Committee. You can find all of their contact details on the Who's Who page of the ITEFL website, or just again email us at head office and we can put you in touch. We also sometimes get asked whether if you want to support a third party event but you're not going to incur any costs or receive any income, whether you're allowed to do that. Absolutely, not a problem. You won't need to submit a budget, but it's such a good news story. Let us know and we can help you promote it. We also get asked, our event budget is showing loss, and is this a problem? Well, not always. I would ask you to think about why you're holding the event, and are you making a decision to incur a loss? Is this decision a conscious decision? As in, are there any other benefits to holding this event? Is it marketing ITEFL in a region currently underrepresented in membership? Do you think you may recruit new members by holding this event? Are you doing it deliberately to fulfil part of our charitable remit through doing a face event in a low income area and charging a minimal cost? If there is no clear benefit to holding this event, then I would suggest you need to reconsider your budget and think about whether this event is feasible. We also get asked, can we use the SIG reserves? Well, typically not to cover operational costs, your everyday costs, but you could use your reserves to fund a special project or a scholarship or a grant. So this could be, again, perhaps a website development project or a couple of particular scholarships that you feel you want to offer. I would always urge you, if you are going to use your reserves though, think about the fact that it's not committee money, this is your SIG's members' money, and therefore it should be being used for a wider benefit to the whole of the SIG membership. So always think about whether using those reserves is going to bring about a benefit. That's all I have to say at the moment. I hope that this has given you some food for thought when you are putting your budgets together. Remember that there are always resources available to you from head office and also from the Finance Committee. If in doubt, please do contact us. Thank you.